Live your life, boy.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Conspiracy Farm, where we don't start the conspiracies, we just add the water. And now, your host of the most state-of-the-art, most informed podcast on the interweb, I present to you Pat Miletich and Jeffrey Wilson. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for war?
Yeah, rear naked choke a Cocker Spaniel, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Bro.
Change the neighborhood up.
Conspiracy Farm. Go. Check it out.
Here we go. Off to them, their races, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode as we are back here on the farm. No stranger to the farm. We've had him on multiple times. Was great to get his insight and chat when the pandemic was going on. But it's always good to catch up with my boy. He is the host of the Macroaggression Podcast, and he is a very, very prolific author, as we're about to get into. His first book, I believe was his first book, The Octopus of Global Control. Second book, The Controlled Demolition of the American Empire, which we're going to get into today. And apparently, breaking news, he has a third book coming out, which we're obviously going to talk about. Charlie Robinson is back on the farm. What is that, my friend?
What's going on? Good to talk to you both again. It's not like anything has happened since the last time we talked.
Yeah.
Right? Just wars, currency devaluations, lockdowns, insanity, just the regular.
Just another day on this flat earth, let me tell you. Man, it was always, it's good to talk to you because we were just talking a second ago and that was kind of like, what do we want to talk about specifically? We're going to get into a lot of stuff, but just intuitively, I know you're somebody who obviously gets it and can kind of go a little bit of everywhere. And, I hate to say it, but I don't like doing the victory laps. I told you so shit, because there's some stuff. We were right about a lot of shit. Let's just, set it straight. But, we might have missed some stuff here and there. But I want to talk to you about specifically your latest book, the controlled demolition of an American empire, because we've talked about this in so many different iterations, whether it's the culture war, the currency, ideological subversion, as Yuri Bezmenov put it, this long-term strategy to totally turn this country into something that's completely unrecognizable. And we're almost there. Sorry, I am with my partner in crime, UFC Hall of Famer Pat Miletich. Pat, you're doing good too?
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm here.
I forgot any. I apologize. I'm so happy to talk to my boy.
We've been doing podcasts together for 8 years or more, I guess, and he suddenly forgot the podcast manners and stuff. It's hurtful.
He is the reason for the season, ladies and gentlemen. He is my brother from another mother, Pat Miletich. I love you, brother. You know it. But yeah. So what we're seeing now is basically the title of your book, The Controlled Demolition of an American Empire. What say you, sir? We're in it right now, man. We're in it.
Yeah. And I think Jeff Berwick and I, who wrote the book with me on this, we would suggest that the controlled demolition of the American empire isn't the worst thing that could happen either. Frankly, it needs to happen. Not to America, but to the American empire. And there's a huge difference. We're talking about 1,000 military bases all around the world, locking people out based on the SWIFT banking system and, putting sanctions on foreign countries, putting 1,000 military bases all over the place and demanding that everybody use the dollar. I mean, we act like maniacs out there towards the rest of the world. And that song and dance can only go on for so long before, you can only bully the kids in the classroom for so long until one day the bully comes around the corner and then there's everybody standing there just waiting for him. And then that guy gets stuffed in the locker because he had it coming to him. In America, the American empire and the things that we have done under the guise of spreading democracy has been some of the most despicable things that a countries can do to other people. And so Berwick and I sort of make this pitch here that the empire is coming down. It's been slated for destruction. You can't create a one world government and still have a massive superpower existing. It's sort of a problem. So you take it down. However you choose to do that, Yuri Bezmenov style of demoralization and cultural subversion from the inside, hollow it out financially by devaluing the currency. Take the society, take the women out of the house and put them in the workforce, take the industries out of the Rust Belt of America through NAFTA and ship them off to China. If you do enough of these things, it's like lighting a 30 years fuse on society. It doesn't happen right away. NAFTA happened in the mid 90s and we knew it was bad, and Ross Perot said it was going to be bad, and he was right. But it took a while for that to really be felt. And you feel that in places where there's no more industrial capacity and there's no more jobs and the buildings are crumbling, and it's Flint, Michigan, and it's all these places. And so, you know, it's undeniable that the empire is coming down. The only question is, who is the one pushing down the plunger, really?
Well, now speak to, you know, throughout history, how empires have been used, you know, by the elites, by the bloodlines that have always controlled the planet. You know, the Roman army, the Persians, you know, the British army. Moving on to the Americans, you know, our military's been used as the hitmen, you know, globally to steal resources and you know, put in place or remove dictators. And now, you know, does it seem to be switching to China, the Chinese military, and Russia potentially? Because it sounds like our contingency, you know, for, you know, Taiwan and these other areas, governmentally wise, is for American citizens and everything else, is just an evacuation program. They don't have any, like, save that area and at all. It's all about evacuation.
It's funny you mentioned the economic hitman component to this, because I was just talking to John Perkins, the author of that book. And Perkins, that book changed my life, put me on a whole different trajectory, because I didn't understand the money side of it, you know, and he explained the loan to own, the World Bank and the IMF, and how they create these debt traps, and that's how empires have worked for a long, long time. And I thought, oh, that's really fascinating. I didn't consider that. And so I'm talking to him a couple of weeks ago, and we're talking about China. We're talking about the role of China. And he says, well, it's funny you say that, because I've got a third version of Confessions of an Economic Hitman coming out the end of February, and it focuses on the Chinese economic hitman in Africa and the plan that they're using for that. It's a little different. It's not the same as what America does. America would set up these debt traps through using the IMF and World Bank, and it would be the end goal would be to get them to default so that they could take back tangible assets or put a military base, or have them privatize their fishing industry and sell it to their buddies, or vote their way in a UN resolution or some bullshit deal they didn't want to do, but they'd get sort of trapped into it because of the debt they had fallen behind on, because this hydroelectric power plant didn't pencil out the way they said it was going to, right? And the Americans all would set that up as with the goal of getting them trapped in order to extract these resources. Well, the Chinese do it a little differently. They have a bigger play with the Belt and Road Initiative, where they're looking to partner with Africa, with these countries. You know, back in the old days, America would go to Africa and say, well, we need these resources and you've got them. And they'd say, oh, I don't know what to tell you. We've got them, but we don't have the ability to get them anywhere. And the Chinese would say, we'd love to do business with you. We can get your cobalt. And they'd say, well, we'd love to do business with you too. But again, we just don't have the ability to get this cobalt to you. And they said, well, what if you did? What if we built the infrastructure? What if we built the rail that took it from Congo all the way to the ports? You know, what if we did that? And they said, well, now we're talking, right? So America wanted to go get into relationships with these foreign countries and get them into economic slavery so that they could extract resources from them. The Chinese want to partner with them, want to work with them. I'm sure they've got some nefarious intentions as well. I mean, sure. They probably envision Chinese warships in all these ports that they're building around the world, but they at least, they're trying to run a business here. They're trying to get these resources out into their hands, in control of the electric vehicle resources. You know, all the green technology stuff that we're supposed to be going towards. You know, all that stuff is either in Africa or locked up in Chile or China. And so what do we have? Do we have relationships with these countries? Well, we used to, but we've pissed them off so much they don't want to work with us anymore, but they'll work with the Chinese. And so that's kind of where we're going. We're getting into this strange place where it's America versus China, but it's not necessarily in the warfare component, not yet at least, but it's definitely in the resource war. and the ownership of the shipping lines and the Belt and Road Initiative takes the Panama Canal out of play for a lot of their shipping, and that's a big problem. And so you see that there is a new war. It's not a shooting war, but it's more of a trade war, and America is falling behind in it, I think.
Well, and this is what we've talked about so many times, even in our, old school incarnation of the farm. And we just had on Lieutenant General Michael Flynn on Self-Defense Warrior talking about asymmetrical, nonlinear, fifth-generation warfare. I disagree with you, Charlie, in the point that it is a war. It's just an asymmetrical war. Like you said, it's not a shooting war. And it's not even just what you articulated is so spot on, and how they've expanded, and how Belt and Road is really just the foundation of their takeover, not just Eurasia, but like you said, Africa, and even some of their most recent dealings, Central and South America. Brother, I tweeted something about this. They're taking it all over without firing a single shot. And everything that's being powered as far as our next level is technology and the technocracy, et cetera, is all powered by things like you said, these precious minerals, specifically cobalt, which is in all of our phones, all of our laptops, all the electronic vehicles, and they're in charge of extrapolating that. Now, granted, that's human child slavery that's extrapolating those minerals in its next level, fucking atrocious, but they're in charge of all of these different, conflict mines, conflict minerals that is literally powering the next stage of the world's evolution. And you're so right about kind of the symbiotic relationship that China's creating with these countries they're taking over, as opposed to going in and freaking just stacking bodies and just creating a meat grinder, which then creates such bad PR for the invading country. Let's work together to do this. I'm not trying to take you over. I'm trying to work with you. And a lot of these countries need the money, the economic boost, the infrastructure. But my thing is, man, and you're so right, the Chinese I'm wondering, and I asked General Flynn, where's this going? Are we moving away from U.S. dominance and creating this multipolar world order in these different trade alliances, whether it's China I read in the Jerusalem Post, like Iran and Russia and China are entering certain trade deals. I mean, it's just crazy next level. But I'm sorry I'm rambling, but Zbigniew Brzezinski, who once held General Flynn's position, I asked him in the book, The Grand Chessboard, one of the first few chapters, if not the first few pages, was all about protecting Eurasia. And with the expanse of China right now, we're seeing them locking down Eurasia and more without firing a shot. And I find it fascinating because it seems like we're just allowing for it to happen. Or because since this whole new world order, multipolar world order, was written about so long ago, this is just happening. This is, as Fletcher Prouty wrote about in The Secret Teams, this is inevitable. They've been talking about and putting these global governments into place for a long time. And there's, not to sound defeatist, but there's just no stopping it. I know that was a lot there.
I did an episode recently called The New Silk Road, which was talking about this neocolonialism, the use of debt for enslavement as opposed to just overt slavery. And it's interesting. I've talked about this before, and I think I put this in one of the books, that Africa or China builds hospitals for sick Africans, where America builds graveyards for dead Africans. We're in Djibouti with our massive drone strike operation, forward base operating there. And that is causing destruction all over the place. And the Chinese have a much different take. They're in there using just setting up these relationships. You talked about Eurasia and what Brzezinski talks about talking about this being the most focal part, where Europe, Asia, Middle East all kind of converge in this Afghanistan region, Kazakhstan, that region over there. Well, the projects that they've got going right now, two separate styles. One is over land and one is through the ocean. And the ones that are going over land are quite literally copying the original Silk Road, the 200 BC to 220 AD Han Dynasty running this Silk Road, and it ran right through Central Asia. And so China's got
Marco Polo.
Yep. China, Central Asia, West Asia corridor that goes from Western China to Turkey. Obviously, there's oil component there. You've got another one that's China, Indochina Peninsula Economic Corridor, and that goes from southern China to Singapore, all the way down that route. You've got the new Eurasian land bridge, which connects Western China to Western Russia. So they're getting at this all
Well, if you look at the map, there's plenty of maps you could routes go. One goes right through Ukraine. Not an accident. And I said this many years ago. Where we see different places where there's certain regions, whether it's the stands, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's South Ossetia and Azerbaijan and Armenia, any of those regions, these are areas that got to do the problem, reaction, solution, because these are areas where this one belt, one road is rolling through. And like you said, there's that maritime route going down around the South Pacific into the Indian, Sri Lanka, Kenya. And this enters things, when you talk about trading organizations and trading alliances, ASEAN, which I've talked about a lot, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which I believe is like 11 different nations down there, Malaysia, Philippines, et cetera, huge economy. I think one of the largest, third largest in the world or whatever. But these are also huge alliances that they have to create, facilitate what they call the String of Pearls, which is that maritime route that goes out into the Indian Ocean. And, you know, I've said this before, man. My history teacher in community college, freaking long time ago, talked about the Spratly Islands. And the Spratly Islands has like a couple billion or whatever resources and oil reserves and natural gas, et cetera. But these are the same areas that China's been building these bases on. So this has been going on for a long time. And I don't know if you've ever played the game of Risk or Stratego back in the day. Like, they've locked it down, man. And I hate to keep saying this, but they haven't fired a fucking shot yet. I mean, look at all the wars that have happened and just the bodies have been just freaking stacked due to this an expansion of resources and land. China's doing it, and they're not even killing any. I mean, they're killing people, and they're horrible, like cobalt mines and shit like that. But you know what I mean? It's the body count doesn't stack up like it used to, and it's wickedly genius, unfortunately.
And it's going to last them if they can get it all built out, and it'll take 30 years. But if they can get it all built out, it's going to boost the global economy by $7 trillion a year, they say. It's going to connect a lot of underserved countries to them. It's going to give them ports in a variety of countries where, let's just be honest, if you control the ports, you control, like as an example, they've got China's got the lease in this, the port in Pakistan till 2059, I think. And you think they can control what comes in, what goes out. They'll just, even if they don't limit it, they'll know what's coming in, what's going out. They'll be able to make it look like things aren't going in that are, or vice versa. They'll have access to a lot of information, they'll have the ability to just stop trade with some people if they want to do this. Now, of course, it's supposed to be democratic in a sense that everybody gets a vote in this. China has the most votes, of course, but, the way this thing is playing out right now, they're already buying. Like you said, they don't have to fire a shot when you give Pakistan $32 billion. This is just through 2018. $32 billion, another $23 billion to Nigeria. You know, Tony Blinken was in Nigeria, and he was giving a speech, and he was, he was talking about how this whole, China is involved. He said major powers, meaning China, for too often have been partnering with African nations on international infrastructure deals that are opaque, coercive, and burden countries with unimaginable debt. That's our job. No, I'm kidding. They didn't put the that's our job part in, but it sounds like it, right? So he's giving this speech in Nigeria. And Nigeria has already accepted $30 billion from China to build out infrastructure projects and whatever. So it's a little too late for Tony Blinken. I mean, the ship has sailed. They're going to take this Chinese money because it's coming in at 2% interest rates. It's very reasonable. It's a debt trap that isn't really set to trap them necessarily, except to keep them sort of, keep them engaged in this. If we allow China to do this, and I think we're not going to have any sort of say in this, I think it's going to happen regardless, but they're going to modernize the shipping lines for the next 100 years, and they're going to be in control of it. And we saw what happened when we controlled the Panama Canal. That they'll control the equivalents of this. I mean, they might even control the Suez Canal because it's going through that connection there. And if you put together a good enough plan with Egypt, you may be able to run that yourself. So, and and some of these countries that say they're on our side have partnered with the Chinese. Italy's on board. Israel's on board. I mean, if you're so if you're so loyal to America, Israel, then why are you partnering with the Chinese? Why did you take $9 billion from the Chinese already for this? If you're supposed to be our best and trusted ally. So I think there's a switch happening. It feels like America is losing its grip, and it's a shame for the United States of America. But again, this goes back to that American empire. You just spread yourself too thin. And like you mentioned, Pat, these empires follow a very predictable cycle. There's several steps in this cycle, and you look at it and you see what's happened in previous cycles with previous empires. And you get to that eighth step, and you look at it and you go, oh, that's where we are. We're at the eighth step. We're at the final step. We're at the step where everything is crazy right before it ends.
Yeah. China's been, taking over ports and airports globally for quite a long time, for national debt, trade deficits and things like that. So that's nothing new. The one thing that I want to ask is something that I've thought about a lot is, if we are to believe in what's going on in the world today in terms of eugenics, the treatments, population control, all these things, they're doing an awful lot of infrastructure building for trade and commerce and everything else, while at the same time perceived potentially, from some of the experts I've talked to who are former Pfizer high ups, who said things like, 3.5 billion dead in 5 to 7 years type thing. So if the goal is, if we go by Georgia Guidestones, 500 million in perpetuity globally, why are they doing all this work then to create these trade routes and massive infrastructure if there's only going to be, 500 million people left?
It's a great question, and I think it's one that needs investigation. But I would say this about it. First of all, I don't know that I know that they want to get it down to 500 million. And if they do, none of the trade routes will really matter. But if you look at the Deagle document, the document that came out years and years ago, talking about the depopulation goal levels. Well, they weren't calling it depopulation, but they were just showing the population in 2015, the population in 2025, and the massive changes in that, about 70%. If you line that up and you look at where the bulk of that was happening, it was happening in the West. It was happening in the United States and Canada and Mexico and Western Europe and Australia and places like that. Those are places that are not as impacted by the Belt and Road Initiative, actually. They're sort of going around it. I'm not saying that the depopulation isn't going to happen worldwide. If it were up to America, I mean, according to that 74 Kissinger memo, he's already got the countries lined up that he wants slated for depopulation. And they are most definitely those countries that are in that Belt and Road Initiative, Pakistan and Bangladesh and India and places like that and parts of Africa. So I think they would love to depopulate, and I think they are depopulating, and I think that is most definitely the plan. But at the same time, the Chinese might have 90-something% double vaccinated, but they're at 0% boosted because they didn't offer them. So if the booster is the kill shot, then the Chinese have avoided it.
Yeah,
well, I think it seems.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I've often wondered about.
Well, I just.
They
want to
military.
Kill. Sorry.
Chinese military as opposed to American military is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. It's look, this is a lot of work. But if they do this, if they get this trade system set up, by the way, America has their own version of this. I have to just mention this because it's so ridiculous that the Biden administration came out and they said that they're going to copy this. They want to do do global infrastructure projects and everything. And they came up with an idea. They said it was going to this was June of 2021. And the name of the plan they have is Build Back Better World.
Drawn with crayons, of course.
Right. And the main pillars that they're concerned with in this, the Biden administration, for this global infrastructure project, the main things are communications technology, health security, clean energy, and gender equality. Because gender is a big deal when it comes to infrastructure. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. So America's response to this is to come up with the dumbest idea ever to sort of counteract that. And they've already and by the way, it's not just an idea. We have committed $200 billion to this project, this Belt and Road Initiative competitor.
Yeah,
America has committed $200 billion of money that we don't have out of a total of $600 billion that's been pledged by other nations. So it's wrecking it. It's going.
How much of this is just an extension of an Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, whether, it's almost 6 one way, half a dozen the other. China's going to be, and Eurasia is going to be setting up their quote unquote smart city. And this could be what our version of, Build Back Better, to me, just reeks of big smart cities. They don't want to necessarily kill you. They want to control you and track you. And, it's like the Matrix. We're all just like pods just feeding this machine.
I wonder about it.
Well, none of this could be possible without the assistance of, foreign agents within our own government and bureaucracies. There's a lot of people receiving a lot of money from China, from Russia, from other places, the Ukraine. We're literally infested with foreign agents. And it's, American citizens need to become aware that the people in Washington, D.C. are operating on a completely different rule set. They do not care about us, and that people need to, reach out to their representatives, whether you're on the left or the right, and raise holy hell with them about all of this, about Ukraine, about China, about Russia, everything that's going on, about the things that have gone on in the Middle East, and demand that they stop spending money, on other nations in any way, shape, or form, whether it be border control in other nations or sending arms for deals, any of this stuff, funding wars, all of it.
I'm becoming isolationist as I get older. I'm watching these policies, and everyone's talking about globalization and isn't it great? And, I get it. There's some parts that are okay, but I am of the belief we should prioritize our own country first. Make sure that we are doing the best that we can be doing. Make sure that our schools work. We're left behind in that. Make sure that our money is sound. The dollar is a joke. All fiat currencies are, but we're, our society, do we seem like a healthy society? We seem really broken on the inside. And so it's until we, if it's the Jordan Peterson thing of clean your room, we're out here lecturing the world and our room is a disaster and we're,
you don't even make your own bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, we have a bad connection, but that's his thing. Make your own bed, and then you can start telling people what to do with their lives.
Yeah. We're worried about Ukraine's border security. Meanwhile, our southern flank is left wide open, and then you go, well, why is that? It's not obviously we know we know that it's open, so they know it's open. Why is that? And you go, well, I don't know. These guys are all Trilateral Commission guys, and they want that border left open because they have bigger plans. They have the North American Trade Organization. I just recorded an episode. It'll be coming out pretty soon, called Declaration of North America. Have you heard of this? This is the joining of Canada, the United States, and Mexico.
Yeah.
And this is where actually,
is that a new NAFTA?
Yeah, kind of. Except that it's removal of basically of sovereignty. It's a connecting these three countries together with a mutual constitution. And AMLO, the Mexican president, was talking about this in front of, in an interview with somebody, and he said that sort of a throwaway comment, but he was saying that he had talked to Anthony Blinken recently about this, and he was in agreement with him about that shared constitution. And Matt Gaetz went, wait, what are you talking about? You guys are talking about a shared constitution with, we're talking about, Anthony Blinken is talking about this with Mexico and AMLO and Canada, and Trudeau over there about a shared constitution between all these people and a shared trade routes and all this stuff. And he's going, what are you talking about? You go, well, they're all trilaterals. Anthony Blinken is, Jake Sullivan is, the national security advisor, and there's at least a dozen others in the Biden administration that have put their trilateral membership on ice, as you have to when you go into the government. Put it on ice, and they've rotated into the Biden administration. And they're taking that same ideology with them, which is one world government, but don't do it in steps, incremental. Click up the Euros,
yes.
European group countries into the Euro. Click up North America into the Amero. Click up the Southeast Asian countries you were talking about into groups. Then once you get those groups together, you get them cooperating with a shared philosophy or a shared constitution like they're talking about, then it becomes easier to then connect them up again. So you're just making bigger groups, and then eventually you'll just snap them all together like Legos. And that
all
is
of the unions, yeah. North American Union, African Union, European Union, but it goes back to what you were saying. As they erode borders, the borders almost become insignificant because these trade alliances, these economic alliances with these countries just almost erode all of these borders. So it less becomes about any kind of, nationalism, like you said, symbiotic relationships. And it seems like this is a part of this expansion of the multipolar world order. You're creating these unions and these trade organizations, these economic alliances, and then these individual countries' constitutions almost mean dick anymore. And they're willing to give it up because it's like, well, yeah, we need the help from China, or we need these alliances. And it just becomes a foregone conclusion that, like you said, they're just taking these countries over through these trade alliances and these economic agreements.
And who are the trilaterals in the Biden administration? Oh, just Nicholas Burns, the U.S. ambassador to China. and I
mean, who was the guy? Swalwell. I forget what his position was. He was smashing a Chinese spy and was still allowed to be on the I believe it was the Intelligence Committee or something like that. I mean, going back to what we were talking about, this infiltration, I didn't even know this until not too long ago. Roosevelt, like his Secretary of Transportation or something like that, was a communist. Like, technically, McCarthy was pretty fucking spot on because this infiltration happened a long, long time ago. So now we're just seeing that kind of the fruits of all their labor because all these institutions are compromised. I talk oftentimes about support your local shit. Sheriffs, go to these city council meetings, etc. But like they always do, they compromise us with that federal money, man, even down to the local level. So even though your heart and mind might be in the right place, they got you by the balls because they hit you with them big bags, dude, that you just can't turn down. I mean, I'm sure there's still some sheriffs and local people still staying steadfast to the cause, if you will. But even on that local level, man, they're still.
Jeff, consider it. I mean, they've done things to me. They've written articles, to cost me a job, cost me money, things like that. So, what they'll do, they'll go to any length. They'll go way farther than that. But I mean, then, considering my background, if they offer me a ton of money to be a FEMA camp, head guy and run a FEMA camp, for $1 million a year, what's a guy to do?
You think I hope I get put in your camp? Eat. God.
Yeah.
I hope it's just yours.
Yeah, it'll be prime rib and baked potatoes and.
No, but again, it's just hard to get your mind around everything that's going on, whether it's Ukraine. I mean, and it's, for us, I don't know, not that we're cool or anything, but for us, we kind of see the larger strategy going on. It's very frustrating that so many people get caught up in the weeds and they're not even playing checkers when the game playing fucking tiddlywinks and shoots and ladders. But it's very frustrating because we're seeing, as I've said many times, people's quote unquote ignorance is becoming dangerous for all of us who happen to know what the fuck is up, whether it's masks or COVID vaccines or any of this stuff. We're seeing this happen and play out in front of us, and it's, death by a million slices. And it's weird. Most people just really don't have a clue or don't get the vastness of this global stratagem, if you will.
Yeah, I've got a quote here. It says, this is a White House document. It says, since June, Mexico, the United States, and Canada have collectively welcomed record number of migrants and refugees from the Western Hemisphere under new and expanded labor and humanitarian programs. It's like, yeah, we noticed you left the border open. We're aware of this. There's 5 million people in just under the Biden administration that have come in through the southern border. And to be crystal clear, I don't fault the people. Okay. I mean, if you're in Central America and your country is being destabilized, more than likely by the American empire, and things are bad, and you're in fear, and you're being offered an opportunity to get out of here and get to a place where your prosperity is pegged to your ability to work, and you feel, well, I'll work then. If that's how it works, if that's how it goes, I'll go there and work. I can't blame the people. I understand it's being organized. It's really being organized, and they're making this happen. But I don't blame the people themselves. I blame the policies. I blame what we're doing in Central America, and we're creating this situation. But then we're also simultaneously going, oh, yeah, we're fixing it, like Biden and Kamala Harris. And they go, yeah, we're going down to the border to fix it. I'm like,
yeah,
you're not.
That was a joke.
You don't want to fix it. And we know you're
going back to what you said, going back. Well, and again, this is kind of, clearly by design. You know, from a certain strategy, they're letting all these cats in, giving them free shit, and we might never see a Republican anything, you know, as they keep infiltrating. And going back to how societies and empires fall, I mean, you go back to Rome, and they got hit with all them outsiders from everywhere, becoming senators, et cetera, et cetera. It was a slow drip, but that's, again, how Rome fell. But this could be exactly what they want, not just from a micro-political standpoint of weaponizing all the people you give free shit to, but if they're setting up these unions, you know, it's all one country. You know, of course, the borders. Everyone can just walk around wherever. If this is their larger design, and it makes sense when you see the numbers like you're talking about, and what I've heard as far as unprecedented amount of folks just coming across the border, and the amount of people who are on the terror list. It's like just next level. But again, this is, if they wanted to stop it, they could stop it. I mean, obviously,
listen to this quote.
The numbers they're putting up.
Listen to this quote from the White House talking about this Declaration of North America. It's wild. It says, North America shares a unique history and culture that emphasizes innovation, equitable development, and mutually beneficial trade to create inclusive economic opportunities for the benefit of our people. We are not just neighbors and partners. Our people share bonds of family and friendship and value, above all else, freedom, justice, human rights, equality, and democracy. This is the North American DNA. Declaration of North America. DNA. You can already feel the dystopian word games they're playing with. This is just part of your DNA of living here. You know, and
inclusive.
It's who you are. Don't fight it.
So let's I want to pivot to Ukraine. Let's talk more specifically about what's going on in the Ukraine, and we've known for a long time, since, you know, even long before 2014 when the overthrow of the Ukrainian government took place, certainly with our funding, NATO's assistance, and everything else. But, you know, we fast forward to now, we've got, you know, tanks being sent over. They're going to be stationed in tank depots in Germany, in Poland, you know, potential, you know, escalation and spreading out of the war. You know, if Russia's got targets to hit inside of Germany, inside of Poland, they're certainly going to hit them if you know, massive amounts of tanks and hardware are being sent in from those locations. We've got issues.
We've got big issues. We've got biolabs in there that we're running that if they fall into the hands of the wrong people, meaning the Russians, then they're going to know what we're up to. We've got a whole lot of evidence left behind in Ukraine. It seems to be the reason why we're defending it as much as we are and getting involved in this sort of a variety of agendas sort of overlapping. If it's a Venn diagram, there's a lot of intersection here with reasons for being in Ukraine. Obviously, weakening Russia, using Ukraine as a biolabs facility, money laundering, human trafficking, all the things that these scumbags love. It's all there. You know, it is like if the dark web were a place, it would be Ukraine. You know what I mean? And a shame. What a shame for the people. You know, I mean, I'm anti-war to my core. I don't like that. I don't want any of this because I know it hurts the regular people. If I thought it was going to hurt the politicians, I'd be all for it, but it doesn't. It only hurts. It hurts the innocent people, and I hate that. So I don't want to see Ukraine go through this. But this is a very corrupt, lawless place with a history of big conflicts with its neighbor Russia. And it's so much, it's hard for us as Americans. We sort of we parachute into this Ukraine situation over the last 9 years, or for some people, the last year. Yeah. And there's so much backstory and so much history there. It's like, in World War II, there was a lot going on there. Like, they starved out a ton of people in Ukraine, and the relationship with Russia and everything. It's like, it's a family feud that goes back a long, long time, and we're trying to inject ourselves.
Back to like Khazaria times. I mean, it's
right. Like, if you want to go way back.
Yeah. It's always what it is.
Yeah. And we're getting involved in family squabbles. We're trying to hide the criminality that our government has been involved in that country for a long, long time. You've got the Victoria Nuland, Joe Biden, I withheld $1 billion from them until they fired the prosecutor stuff going. People now that watch MSNBC, they're like, what are you talking about? You're like,
well, that's the thing. You go back to what Jeff and I were covering, and I'm sure you were as well, when the overthrow took place in 2014, the recording of Victoria Nuland, only a part of it was played on mainstream media for a reason, where they were handpicking her and someone from either the Trilateral Commission or I can't remember exactly where. But a phone call was released by the Russians between Victoria Nuland and this individual, and they were selecting the next interim leader of the Ukraine, clearly showing that we were certainly took a massive role in the overthrow of that government. And, the Americans that I've spoken to, I've had so many people, go, oh, I told Jeff about this, and I think I probably did on the show, but I was sitting eating dinner with my 9-year-old daughter at a restaurant, and a lady walked up that I'd known for a long time, and she looked at the TV, and they were talking about Putin and the Ukraine, and she's like, oh, that Putin, he's a horrible guy. And while I don't agree Putin's a great guy, of course he's not, but I said, have you done any research into the real situation of what's really going on there about Ukraine and what we've done over there? And she just looked at me and she goes, oh, you poor thing, I want to give you a hug. And I went, get away from me. Go
What's that
else.
Supposed to mean?
It was, oh, you poor thing, you're so misguided, thinking that, the Ukrainians are bad, the government and what we've done. That's indicative of the American mentality and level of understanding of what's going on in the world.
Again, freaking shoots and ladders when the game is global chess, man. It's almost, you can't even. I'm not better than anybody, but there's just, when they say certain shit like that, there's no conversation to be had. Like, there's no, especially when they're grown ass adults, like, there's nothing we can exchange as far as ideas to make you see anything as far as my sides. Like, if you're doing, oh, you poor thing, like, wow, it's, what do you do?
You'd have to have the full conversation of the role of the American media in lying and things like that. You'd have to, it's like it'd take all day to explain this to them in a way that would make sense, so that you could even begin to talk to them about why this isn't what it appears to be. But so many of us, and we all kind of were victims of this at some point before we knew better. We turned on the TV and we thought we were getting the story. I mean, we maybe we thought there was like a little bit of partisanism to it, like the red team says things that benefit the red team and, maybe shit on the blue team a little bit more than normal. But for the most part, we thought the story was relative. ABC, CBS, and NBC are all reporting it the same way, that an event happened. So, and then, so it must have happened. And what we don't realize until we get older and we dig into this is that the media manipulation is key to this whole thing, whether it be Kennedy, 9/11, or COVID. The media drove the getaway car in all three of these, and they will continue to do that, because without them, the stories and the narratives and these big lies, as Hitler says, the big lie, you talk about that, they don't take hold without the help of the media. And it's very tough to break that programming for ourselves. You have to get honest that you've been lied to, and that's a bad feeling, but you can get over that real fast. But a lot of people don't want to admit that they've been lied to, especially if they're older. Like in that case, Pat, with the lady, an older lady comes by and says, "Oh, poor you." she's been watching the media for her entire life and has no reason to think that they're lying to her, and yet they are. And that is a big
Imagine then, again, imagine when you just say you'd have to talk all day. So imagine all the years, I'm guessing, again, over a quarter century ago is when I read The Creature from Jekyll Island and started to go, whoa, wait a minute. So, excuse me. So for me, imagine somebody going through that process of 25 to 30 years of awakening and unraveling stuff and having somebody like us explain it to them all in one day and coming to the realization in one day. Dude, you talk about an overload. You talk about climbing in a basement and hiding in the corner.
I was just having a conversation with someone the other day about people getting it or not getting it. I literally have been in this, whatever you want to call it, realm for probably 30 plus years. 15, 16 years old, started with the Kennedy thing, blew my fucking mind, no pun intended. And just, it went down, the rabbit hole just started from there. And I'm still like, what? No way. I'm still learning shit. And that's 30 plus years. I mean, you talk about overload. I mean, people just can't even handle, not to say you have to take 30 years to get what's going on, but fuck, man, so much. And JFK, they said, Jim Garrison, played by Kevin Costner, said, the size of this is beyond me. Just talking about the assassination. The size of this is beyond me. And this is everything we're talking about. The size of it is beyond most folks. Like Pat said many years ago, your normal soccer mom or some shit, she's doing exactly what you talked about, Charlie. Listening to NPR, MSNBC or whatever, getting that fast food service of news. I listen to something for 30 minutes. I know what's going on in the world. There's no way they could lie about this or this. Joy Behar and the girls on The View, man, they sure got it down right. But there's so much more to it. And like you said, to convince people they've been lied to is very tough.
You'd have to remake your whole worldview if you were to come to a realization that as 9/11 was 9/11 was not as it appears to be. It wasn't conducted by 19 Arab hijackers with box cutters. It was done by intelligence agencies that had a vested interest in remaking the Middle East. And you go, okay, that in and of itself is enough to melt your brain, to put you into a coma and make you never want to participate. But if you can get through the initial shock and you can rewire your brain, then things start to actually make a lot more sense. You know, that's the thing that is stuck with me, is that it's crazy. I'll give everybody that. I'll grant them that. This whole thing sounds crazy. But just because it's crazy doesn't mean it isn't true. And just because, and like, you know, we talk about it's hidden by the size of it all. It's such a massive conspiracy that you just assume it couldn't possibly be real. And there's plenty of people, you know, the format of my first book, The Octopus, is I had 700 quotes from 500 different people in this book, you know, kind of punctuating the areas that I was talking about. And part of it is that, you know, you're faced with a conspiracy so massive that you can't even comprehend it. And there's plenty of people that have been in positions of very high power that are saying the same thing. They're saying it's just beyond your ability to kind of grip. And that's kind of, you know, look, so when you know that, and then you've got somebody and you're trying to explain to them the Ukraine situation, and they're like, but Rachel Maddow told me, you know, and you just go, I have to prioritize my emotional energy.
Right.
I can't get into this. I can't, like you said, Pat, you're like, just stay away from me. Like, I'm not going to have the conversation. I'm not going to change your mind.
Well, when what was it? The Twitter files, they're still breaking more Twitter files, and how the government was colluding with tech companies. I'm like, fucking hello. Operation Mockingbird, the government's been involved with the media, whether it was tech companies or whatever, creating or maintaining false narratives since the end of World War II. It's been going on for a very, very long time. When you watch I want to say William Colby, or one of the heads of the CIA, was being deposed, and they're like, one of the panel people was like, hey, do we have CIA and Defense Department people in the media? And he kind of talked to his lawyer or whatever, but he was just like, basically, yeah. And this was in the 60s or 70s, I believe. William Colby, or one of the CIA heads. But, I mean, we've known this for a very long time. And then they act like this is brand new. Like, oh, my God, the FBI. I'm like, do we remember fucking J. Edgar Hoover existed and his role in just nefarious shit throughout time? It's like this new generation of people, because we're kind of ADD with our understanding or memory of history. It's like, no, this just started now. Like, no, this has been going on for a very long time. Nothing new is under the sun.
Since you mentioned J. Edgar Hoover, I have to sort of bring this up because it's a point that Whitney Webb made in one of the new books, in the One Nation Under Blackmail. You know, we're in this world where we've just come through. We came through 4 years of Trump and the FBI hating him, and the FBI's out to get him, and they're raiding Mar-a-Lago, and they're doing this, and there's this huge problem. And people go, why is the FBI? I thought that was, Trump's FBI. When he was president, he was in charge, and it's his FBI. How come his FBI hates him so much? And it's like, well, let me take you back to J. Edgar Hoover for a second. Because when J. Edgar Hoover was managing the FBI for 50 years, he was being sexually blackmailed and extorted by a guy who knew his secrets and had the goods on him. And that guy was Roy Cohn. And that was Trump's lawyer. So part of the reason why the FBI hates Donald Trump is because the head of the FBI was being blackmailed for years and years, and was also coincidentally very good friends with Roy Cohn, the guy blackmailing him. They had a very compatible view of the world. Not just politically, but also sexually as well, because Roy Cohn was running sexual blackmail entrapment operations just like Epstein was, and J. Edgar Hoover was doing the same thing, and they entrapped each other, and it was like a mutually assured destruction. So you have to understand, like, the people, like the normies out there that are going, this all sounds so crazy. This, talking about these things, just like, I agree, they sound crazy, but like, it's not new. It's been going on for a long, long time. One of my favorite quotes in my Octopus book is this quote from a guy named John Francis Hyland, and he's talking about this sprawling octopus with its tentacles in the state houses and media and courthouses and big business and all of these different organizations. And he says, to escape from mere generalizations, I'm talking about the Rockefeller Standard Oil interests involved in this whole thing. And you go through and you read it, and it might as well have been written yesterday. And you get to the very end, John Francis Hyland, mayor of New York City, 1922. And you go, God damn it, it's been a century. And it's always been like this.
That's what's weird, man. Nothing is new under the sun. If it ain't broke, don't break it. They've been using the same stratagem for a very long time. And now it's so much more sophisticated. Edward Bernays, and they've known who we are psychologically as human beings and how to market and advertise and manipulate us through social engineering. And now they have our digital footprint. So they now know us almost better than we know ourselves now. So they know how to better manipulate us in such a masterful way.
They get me on Twitter. They get me arguing with robots on Twitter, man. I'm telling you. I know how to push my buttons, get me mad.
Yeah, so let's talk about the likelihood of physical warfare, considering, and Jeff's posed this question, and he posed the question as well to General Flynn, and said the likelihood of some sort of nuclear holocaust level of war was just, he didn't see it as possible. And Flynn retorted back with, never rule out, massive physical global war. What are your thoughts on that? Because, Jeff and I were in line with thinking, well, when they've got the biological and chemical and the other means to reduce the population, why would they resort to, that level of destruction?
Into that, Charlie, one of the reasons I said it was so not possible was because all of these trade agreements and economic alliances, everybody's so economically interdependent that mutually assured destruction just seemed less likely to me. But what are your thoughts?
Well, it seems less likely to me too, for those same reasons. But again, I think General Flynn makes a point. We're exporting our sanity onto them, and we're saying they would never do that. That would be crazy. And you go, well, hang on a second. Yeah. They are a little bit crazy. You have to be sort of unhinged to be at that to move up the food chain to that level and want the sorts of things that they want. It's not something that the three of us could wrap our heads around, because we would never be that bloodthirsty. But so I have to be very careful not assuming they're as level-headed as we are, because we know that they are not. But they are also in business. And a lot of this boils down to what's in it for them. And sometimes war isn't the best outcome. Sometimes, sometimes making money is. Sometimes making alliances is the plan. Sometimes it's better for them to do that. Sometimes it's better to just pretend like, if you're Lockheed Martin, to pretend like there's going to be a big gigantic war, to keep leaking these stories to the media that all the Javelin missiles have, 7 years supply of Javelin missiles have been shot off in 8 months or whatever. And, and you go, oh, this sounds like a sales pitch for Lockheed Martin and Raytheon to generate more money to get it, to keep. So there's always going to be that fake push for war to scare you just enough so that it seems reasonable that the politicians can justify allocating even more money to these arms dealers.
Yeah.
The same arms dealers that, by the way, when they're done in Congress, they're going to go work for them as a lobbyist playing golf with clients 3 days a week, making $750,000 a year. So there's a vested interest in making it sound scary. And I'm not trying to say that it's not scary in Ukraine. I certainly wouldn't want to be there. There's a whole lot of
carnage.
A whole lot of, when you start talking about wars and things like that, mistakes get made. You're putting yourself in a position for something bad to happen. Some guy flies, a missile goes one direction when it's supposed to go the other direction. A guy, whatever. And next thing you know, you're embroiled in World War III. I don't like this, obviously, but I also wonder how much of it is for show. I wonder how much of it is to get us to feel like we're right on the verge of another war or World War III, because then, there go more rights. Here comes more tax dollars to them. Here goes more money out to their partners. We would love to keep you guys in the loop with all this stuff, but unfortunately, loose lips sink ships, so we're going to have to cut the internet access to a lot of Europe for you guys. And you're like, well, if it's to keep us safe, and all that stuff goes in.
Well, I like it. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I liken it to, the Cuban Missile Crisis, that Kennedy dealt with, to the Cold War, the arms buildup, but in this case, threatening potential nuclear war and keeping people scared and keeping this conflict going creates the adversaries needed to look. The World Economic Forum and all the so-called experts are saying we're certainly going to have, a buildup in cyber attacks, and 2025 is the godfather of all cyber attacks that are coming. It's this, what's in the left hand while what they're actually doing, and continuing to build this infrastructure of surveillance and social point scores and everything else. And again, the cyber attacks to bring down, potentially the airline industry, the food distribution industries, the energy, distribution, all of these things, to, make it look like Russia's responsible or China's responsible, and vice versa.
Of course. And I think that probably is the scariest part. Is not that there actually will be. I'm not worried about Russia attacking us. I'm not worried about Russia attacking Western Europe. It would be ridiculous. What I'm worried about is Western Europe attacking Western Europe and blaming it on Russia. I'm worried about a cyber attack in the United States saying, well, we've analyzed it and we found Cyrillic language in the code, so it's got to be Russian. It's like, really? You found, oh boy, those dumb Russians just leaving breadcrumbs everywhere that lead right back to them, So I worry about that, because we'd figure it out in 2 seconds. But again, everyone watching the news it'd be that lady, be like, can you believe Russia created that cyber attack that turned off all of our power? And look, I mean, I'm not saying that a cyber attack won't happen, and I'm not saying the power won't go down. I'm just saying it won't be who we're told it is that's responsible for it, and that creates a problem, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, and it's, what we know is, as, back in the day, Operation Gladio or any kind of false flag. I mean, that's, again, a huge part of warfare that, is, I just find that so fascinating anymore, because like we've talked about, like kinetic war is it's just a bad look. The old model seemed to be, like Smedley Butler talked about, war as a racket to enrich, defense contractors, et cetera. But it seems like the new model with globalism is, going back to of China's model is like, no, let's not take them over. Let's kind of make them part of the team. And, you know, the symbiotic relationship, which of course they're benefiting from, but it's less bad PR or a bad look. You're not stacking bodies in these countries you're taking over. You're doing it in a more, you know, economically viable way for everybody. But, you know, like going back to the everything, they don't need the money. It's all about control. So I think that's kind of where things are lending or going towards as we see these, you know, the Green New Deal, the fourth industrial revolution, et cetera. And let me ask you, you know, Pat kind of brought up social credit score, et cetera. Do you think some of this is by design and in China kind of is the model for where everything is going towards, you know, facial recognition, digital, you know, social credit scores, et cetera? Even though it seems like nation states fighting nation state, like you just alluded to, we're setting up unions over here, which is going to create our own little smart city, et cetera, but it's all kind of going to be linked, I think, with this, you know, democracy, if you call it. Where do you see things going?
Very concerned about the, I'm more concerned about the social credit system sort of taking over than I am like an overt nuclear war against us, because like you said, it's bad optics and
right.
You don't need to do that. And sure, do you want to kill all the people or do you want to control them? Because if you control them, then you can make them work for you. This is obviously their thinking. So if you can control them in a smart city, or you can control them with a central bank digital currency, which allows you to monitor how much money they have and what they spend it on, or make it evaporate, set a timer on it so that it becomes worthless in 180 days. And, you know, you can do all kinds of things. You can fully control your people. And I think that has me concerned the most, because the test run for it has been ongoing when you watch social media and how we react and the lockdowns and what we went through. It felt kind of like a dress rehearsal for how much can we push before the people push back? How much can we scare them before we break them? We broke our toys. Yeah, we scared the shit out of our toys so much we broke them. You know what I mean? That's no good, because we need them. We're going to need them to work for us in this new place, and you know, in the new digital world where everybody's in a smart car and we lock you in these smarts. I mean, look, that's what Agenda 2030 is about. Now, whether or not they can get to the finish line and make that happen, I don't know. But if it were up to them, they're going to use all the pretexts of saving the environment, green technology, carbon. We're killing the world with carbon as the negative behavior that needs to be corrected. And I would suggest that first they will positively correct it, meaning take your central bank digital currencies, convert your U.S. dollars over to them now for the next 90 days, and we'll give you 2 to 1. You know, and then maybe 90 days after that, we'll give you 1 to 1. Then we'll maybe give you 75 cents on the dollar. And so you'll start to push people into this world, reward them. Oh, your score went up on your social credit score. So now we're going to lower your interest rates on when you buy cars. Your interest, it'll be tied to your credit score. We'll lower that. Maybe we'll allow you to go have more universal basic income. Maybe we'll cut it off altogether. So it'll be carrot.
You can use
and then stick later.
You can fly. You can travel from. It's ridiculous.
He purchased 10 pounds. He
weird...
purchased 10 pounds of crickets. Your score is improving drastically, sir.
You're eating well tonight, apparently. But no, it's this weird WWE dialectic of this, you know, Pepsi challenge, Coke versus Pepsi. Over here in Eurasia, they're going to set up their smart cities, but as you alluded to, we're trying to set up ours with our North American Union, and it's going to be the same ship. They're going to be like, oh, no. Ours is the good smart city. We're not in the Chinese smart city, you know. And again, that kind of gets into the whole WWE, and we get just caught up in the nuance of it. Meanwhile, it's just all the same iteration of the same machine, but, you know, we do the whole, you know, we're in the good smart city over here. Sorry. It's ridiculous, man. It's ridiculous.
As a writer, though, it's fascinating to watch it. I wish I didn't have to participate. You know, I wish I could be watching it from like the moon or someplace where I'm not affected by it all.
Exactly.
Because I know it's going to impact me, my daughter's life. She's going to grow up in a world that's vastly different from what I experienced, and maybe some parts of that will be better. But the rate we're going right now, I feel like most parts will be worse. And so I'm watching it and writing it all down as much as I can, and trying to not be, be in it but not of it, and sort of like be watching it but not participating in it. It's tough though for us because we see it clearly. I mean, we see the direction this is going, like we have a map in front of us and we go, well, this is where it's going, but for everyone else, they don't even know they're on a road trip. They're not even, they don't even have a map. But we're going
the best,
bad place.
Yeah. In a short period of time. And the best social engineering is most effective when you don't realize it's happening. But even back when we used to talk during COVID, it was interesting because, we all kind of sat like after, George Floyd died and shit was just being burned down and nobody being arrested and shit was just next level. Like, what the fuck is going on? Everything has gone to hell in such a handbasket in such a short period of time. And I think it goes back to what you're talking about, the conditioning, the programming. A lot of the people I talk to, whatever you want to call them, they're not stupid people. For me, I think it's really kind of it's some, not to get weird about it, but it's some dark magic. It's like a spell people are under. Like people who aren't normally fucking stupid just somehow got stupid all of a sudden.
I have a buddy who has
it's not stupid, uninformed.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
They just don't have the information. Yeah.
I have a buddy who has a master's degree from a great university, and we were talking about COVID, and I said, we were talking about masks and stopping the spread and all that stuff, and I said, well, I'm not wearing masks because they don't work, and he says, well, they work, they do work, and I said, how so? And he said, well, they're helping to slow the spread of it. I said, well, let me ask you this. What do you think is responsible for there being 38 million cases of the flu in 2019 and 1,822 cases of the flu in 2020? What do you think changed? And he goes, masks.
Exactly. That's how they think, dude. That's how they think.
I go, well, if masks got rid of the flu, why didn't it get rid of COVID? And his response was, I don't know, man. And I go, that's right. You haven't even gone past step one and thought this out. And again, a very smart guy, but he'd never really thought about it. Nobody had asked him. He didn't have to defend his point ever to anyone. It was never required of him. It was being told to him by the television, by the media, by social media, by his work, everything. This is what is going on. And never once did anyone say, do you think it sounds reasonable? Because he tried to defend the position by using their talking.
Any measure of critical. Yes.
I had the same conversation.
Measure of critical. I'm sorry.
I had the same conversation in a grocery store. I don't even remember what year it was now, 21, and just the summer of 2021 before the 4th of July, and asking him about, what's going on with the 4th of July celebration here in town. Actually, it might have been 2022. I'm trying to remember exactly. But he's the city planner, and, he's wearing a mask and he's scared. He's got diabetes. He's 60 some years old. And, he told me that, I'm diabetic. I mean, I said, I don't care if you have diabetes. I literally don't care. I don't. I care about my 9-year-old's freedom. And people like you believing this is causing some major problems. And he was, well, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. But it was the exact same conversation about the flu and him saying masks. Masks were what was responsible for flu. And I put my hands on my head. I said, I can't believe I'm even hearing this. It's beyond.
But it's an important conversation to have at least once, because then it reminds you that, okay, like I could hand him the box of the masks that says on the side does not work with coronavirus and COVID. I mean, it says it on the box. I could hand him the box and go, this is the box you're talking about with these masks? And it would be like a blank stare.
Yeah, programmed. They're programmed.
And that is a guy that I've known my entire life, a good friend, a smart person, a good person. And you go, well, if it can happen to him, if they can convince him to believe unbelievable things or not believe his own eyes or use this sort of flawed logic, then really, I think it could probably happen to just about anybody, because he would have been one of the guys I would put in a category that would be able to see through. He'd be like, well, I don't know about this, but
you don't want to kill grandma or grandpa, Charlie. Come on. It's that trauma-based conditioning they use over and fucking over again. It hijacks people's just normal thinking. Said it for fucking years when we were doing this show, and even recently, like, what happened to us that our threat assessment was non-existent. We couldn't critically think about. It goes back to everything we talk about as far as the programming, the engineering, and our faith and trust in these institutions. They would never lie. What do you know Fauci's background? Listen to fucking Robert King, read his book, Truth About Fauci. I mean, it's like, it's not even hidden information, but it freaks me out that this spell is that. I'm sure it's deeper than that, but that the fact that people are still under the spell. I'm still hearing commercials. And the CDC, I believe, made the COVID vaccine a part of the norm for kids getting into grade school. They're doubling down on this shit. Regardless of what Pfizer has come out with, we got some stroke possibility for people over 60.
A Canadian news broadcast. One of the people on the broadcast said, I didn't know this until last year, but apparently about 3 weeks after flu season, it's stroke season. And he was dead serious.
Yeah, I saw that too.
They were dead serious.
Yeah, I saw it too. And now how eggs are creating stroke. Like if you eat an egg, I don't know. It's the mind fuckery. Just there's no shortage, and it's so great to have you back on. And now that the farmer's back, man, you're welcome back. Obviously, anytime. Charlie has a podcast called
Macroaggressions, and
the Union of the Unwanted that he does with Sam Tripoli and a bunch of other people. You guys have the Wu-Tang Clan squared. Sometimes, dude, they have a cavalcade of folks in there, but it's cool though. Everyone's on there exchanging ideas. It's a great platform it's a great show. Shout out any other social networking, Charlie. And your latest book.
Oh,
chop it about that real quick before we let you go.
Surviving in a World of Cultural Double Standards. I put Uncle Sam on the cover in a straitjacket, Thorazine eyes, in a padded cell, because that's pretty much where we are right now.
Yeah,
fucking right. Where can we snatch that up? Is that out? Have you dropped that yet?
It's out. No, it's out. It's available on Amazon, paperback and digital. You can follow me on Twitter at Macroaggression, and my website is theoctopusofglobalcontrol.com. I'll be in Mexico next week at Anarchapulco, speaking as one of the speakers with Del Bigtree and Ron Paul and Dr. Carrie Madej and Dr. Andrew Kaufman and Max Egan and Larkin Rose and Mark Passio and all these other interesting folks that will be speaking there. And we'll be talking about the state of the world. We'll be talking about, some people will be talking about cryptocurrencies, health and wellness, education systems, unschooling, getting your kids out of government schools and getting them into a situation where you can actually educate them about how the world really works. So I'm excited to do that, and I'm excited to be in a place where it's not currently 6 degrees where I am. So,
ouch. Charlie Robinson, ladies and gentlemen, doing the Lord's work, man. It is so great to catch up with you, man. It's
thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I love talking to you.
It's just cool.
Thanks for coming on, Charlie.
It's good to be back on the farm. Support Charlie. And ladies and gentlemen, Pat, any final words for our farmers out here, our faithful farmers?
Hey, thanks for tuning in. This thing is growing. We're getting ready to do the, Got Truth tour coming up here this summer. So we're working and getting set for that, and we're excited about it. So thanks again, Charlie.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Charlie. Peace and so much love, you guys. Love you guys so much, and we really appreciate your support. So stay tuned. There'll always be more out this some bitch. Love y'all.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Charlie.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Have fun in Mexico.